everybody. Hope everyone's had a lovely weekend. It's definitely colder outside. Hope everyone's managing to stay warm okay. So, the BFG was explaining whether giants hurt or even kill each other. They is not killing their own kind, the BFG said. Human beings is the only animals that is killing their own kind. Don't poisonous snakes kill each other? Sophie asked. She was searching desperately for another creature that behaved as badly as the human. Even poisonous snakes is never killing each other, the BFG said. Nor is the most fearsome creatures like tigers and rhinoceroses. None of them is even killing their own kind. Have you ever thought about that? Sophie kept silent. I is not understanding human beings at all, the BFG said. You is a human being, and you is saying it is grizzling and horricus for giants to be eating human beings, right or left? Right, Sophie said. But human beings is squishing each other all the time, the BFG said. They is shooting guns and going up in aeroplanes to drop their bombs on each other's heads every week. Human beings is always killing other human beings. He was right. Of course he was right. And Sophie knew it. She was beginning to wonder whether humans were actually any better than giants. Even so, she said, defending her own race, I think it's rotten that those foul giants should go off every night to eat humans. Humans have never done them any harm. That is what the little piggywig is saying every day, the BFG answered. He is saying, I has never done any harm to the human being, so why should he be eating me? Oh dear, Sophie said. The human beings is making rules to suit themselves, the BFG went on. But the rules they is making do not suit the little piggywiggies. Am I right or left? Right, Sophie said. Giants is also making rules. Their rules is not suiting the human beings. Everybody is making his own rules to suit himself. But you don't like it that these beastly giants are eating humans every night, do you? Sophie asked. I do not, the BFG answered firmly. One right is not making two lefts. Is you quite cosy down there in my pocket? I'm fine, Sophie said. Then suddenly, once again, the BFG went into that magical top gear of his. He began hurtling forward with phenomenal leaps. His speed was unbelievable. The landscape became blurred, and again Sophie had to duck out of the whistling gale to save her head from being blown off her shoulders. She crouched in the pocket and listened to the wind screaming past. It came knifing in through the tiny peephole in the pocket and whooshed around her like a hurricane. But this time, the BFG didn't stay in top gear long. It seemed as though he had but some barrier to cross, a vast mountain perhaps, or an ocean, or a great desert. But having crossed it, he once again slowed down to his normal gallop, and Sophie was able to pop her head up and look out once more at the view. She noticed immediately that they were now in an altogether paler country. The sun had disappeared above a film of vapour. The air was becoming cooler every minute. The land was flat and treeless, and there seemed to be no colour in it at all. Every minute the mist became thicker. The air became colder still, and everything became paler and paler, until soon there was nothing but grey and white all around them. They were in a country of swirling mists and ghostly vapours. There was some sort of grass underfoot, but it was not green. It was ashy grey. There was no sign of a living creature, and no sound at all except for the soft thud of the BFG's footsteps as he hurtled on through the fog. Suddenly he stopped. We is here at last, he announced. He bent down and lifted Sophie from his pocket and put her on the ground. She was still in her nightie and her feet were bare. She shivered and stared around her at the swirling mists and ghostly vapours. Where are we? She asked. We is in dream country, the BFG said. This is where all dreams is beginning. Dream catching. The big friendly giant put the suitcase on the ground. He bent down low so that his enormous face was close to Sophie's. From now on we is keeping as still as winky little moiseys, he whispered. Sophie nodded. The misty vapour swirled around her. It made her cheeks damp and left dewdrops in her hair. The BFG opened the suitcase and took out several empty glass jars. He set them ready on the ground, with their screw tops removed. Then he stood up very straight. His head was now high up in the swirling mist, and it kept disappearing, then appearing again. He was holding the long net in his right hand. Sophie, staring upwards, saw through the mist that his colossal ears were beginning to swivel out from his head. They began waving gently to and fro. Suddenly, the BFG pounced. He leapt high in the air and swung the net through the mist with a great swishing sweep of his arm. "Got him!" he cried. "A jar! A jar! Quick, quick, quick!" Sophie picked up a jar and held it up to him. He grabbed hold of it. He lowered the net. Very carefully, he tipped something absolutely invisible from the net into the jar. He dropped the net and swiftly clapped one hand over the jar. "The top," he whispered. "The jar top, quick!" Sophie picked up the screw top and handed it to him. He screwed it on tight and the jar was closed. The BFG was very excited. He held the jar close to one ear and listened intently. "It's a wink squiffler," he whispered with a thrill in his voice. It's even better. It's a fizz wizard. It's a golden fizz wizard." Sophie stared at him. Oh my, he said, holding the jar in front of him. "This will be giving some little toddler a very happy night when I is blowing it in." "Is it a really good one?" Sophie asked. "A good one?" he cried. "It's a golden fizz wizard. It is not often I is getting one of these." He handed the jar to Sophie and said, "Please, be still as a starfish now. I is thinking there may be a whole swarm of fizz wizards up here today, and do kindly stop breathing. You was terribly noisy down there." "I haven't moved a muscle," Sophie said. "Then don't," the BFG answered sharply. Once again he stood up tall in the mist, holding the net at the ready. Then came the long silence, the waiting, the listening, and at last, with surprising suddenness, came the leap and the swish of the net. "Another jar!" he cried. "Quick, quick, quick!" When the second dream was safely in the jar and the top was screwed down, the BFG held it to his ear. "Oh no!" he cried. "Oh, mince my maggots! Oh, swipe my squaggles!" "What's the matter?" Sophie asked. "It's a troggle humper!" he shouted. His voice was filled with fury and anguish. "Oh, save our solos!" he cried. "Deliver us from weasels! The devil is dancing on my dibbler!" "What are you talking about?" Sophie said. The BFG was getting more distressed every moment. "Oh, bash my eye bones!" he cried, waving the jar in the air. "I come all this way to get lovely golden dreams, and what is I catching?" "What are you catching?" Sophie said. "I is catching a frightsome troggle humper," he cried. "This is a bad, bad dream. It is worse than a bad dream. It is a nightmare." "Oh dear," Sophie said. "What will you do with that?" "I is never letting it go," the BFG cried. "If I do, then some poor little toddler will be having the most curd-bloodling time. This one is a real kicksy dumper. I is exploding it as soon as I get home." "Nightmares are horrible," Sophie said. "I had one once and I woke up sweating all over." "With this one you would be waking up screaming all over," the BFG said. "This one would make your teeth stand on end. If this one got onto you, your blood would be freezing to icicles and your skin would go creeping across the floor." "Is it as bad as that?" "It's worse," cried the BFG. "This is a real wopsy grob switcher." "You said it was a troggle humper," Sophie told him. "It is a troggle humper," cried the exasperated BFG. "But it is also a bog thumper and a grob switcher. It's all three riddled into one. Oh, I is so glad I is clutching it tight." "Ah, you wicked beastie, you," he cried, holding up the jar and staring into it. "Never more is you going to be bunk-doodling the poor little human beanie toddlers." Sophie, who was also staring into the glass jar, cried out, "I can see it. There's something in there." "Of course there is something in there," the BFG said. "You is looking at a frightsome troggle humper." "But you told me dreams were invisible." "They is always invisible until they is captured," the BFG told her. "After that they is losing a little of their invisibility. We are seeing this one very clearly. Inside the jar, Sophie could see the faint scarlet outline of something that looked like a mixture between a blob of gas and a bubble of jelly. It was moving violently, thrashing against the sides of the jar and forever changing shape. It's wiggling all over the place, Sophie cried. It's fighting to get out. It'll bash itself to bits. The nastier the dream, the angrier it is getting when it's in prison, the BFG said. It's the same as with wild animals. If an animal is very fierce and you is putting it in a cage, it will make a tremendous rumble dump. If it is a nice animal, like a cockatoo or a foggle-frump, it will sit quietly. Dreams is exactly the same. This one is a nasty, fierce, bog-rotting nightmare. Just look at him splashing himself against the glass. It's quite frightening, Sophie cried. I would be hating to get this one inside me on a darksome night, the BFG said. So would I, Sophie said. The BFG started putting his bottles back into the suitcase. Is that all? Sophie asked. Are we going? I is so upset by this troggle-humping, bog-thumping grobswitcher, the BFG said, that I is not wishing to go on. Dream catching is finished for today. Soon, Sophie was back in the waistcoat pocket, and the BFG was racing home as fast as he could go. When, at last, they emerged out of the mist and came again onto the hot yellow wasteland, all the other giants were sprawled out on the ground, fast asleep. A troggle-humper for the flesh lump eater. They is always having 50 winks before they go scumpering off to hunt human beings in the evening, the BFG said. He stopped for a few moments to let Sophie have a better look. Giants is only sleeping every then and now, he said. Not nearly as much as human beings. Human beings is crazy for sleeping. Is it ever occurring to you that a human being who is 50 is spending about 20 years sleeping fast? I must admit that never occurred to me, Sophie said. You should allow it to occur to you, the BFG said. Imagine it, please. This human being who says he's 50 has been fast asleep for 20 years and is not even knowing where he is. Not even doing anything. Not even thinking. It's a funny thought, Sophie said. Exactly, the BFG said. So what he's trying to explain to you is that a human being who says he is 50 is not 50, he is only 30. What about me? Sophie said. I'm 8. You is not 8 at all, the BFG said. Human being babies and little chidlers is spending half their term sleeping, so you is only 4. I'm 8, Sophie said. You may think you is 8, the BFG said, but you has only spent 4 years of your life with your little eyes open. You is only 4, and please stop higgling me. Titchy little snapper whippers like you should not be higgling around with an old sage and onions who is hundreds of years more than you. How much do giants sleep? Sophie asked. They is never wasting too much time snozzling, the BFG said. 2 or 3 hours is enough. When do you sleep? Sophie asked. Even less, the BFG answered. I is sleeping only once in a blue baboon. Sophie, peering out from her pocket, examined the 9 sleeping giants. They looked even more grotesque now than when they were awake. Sprawled out across the yellow plain, they covered an area about the size of a football field. Most of them were lying on their backs with their enormous mouths wide open, and they were snoring like foghorns. The noise was awful. Suddenly, the BFG gave a jump in the air. By gumfrog, he cried. I's just having the most whopsy-whiffly idea. What? Sophie said. Wait, he cried. Hold your horse feathers. Keep your skirt on. Just you wait to see what he is going to bring about. He galloped off fast to his cave with Sophie hanging on tight to the rim of his pocket. He rolled back the stone. He entered the cave. He was very excited. He was moving quickly. You stay where you is in my pocket, Huggy Bee, he said. We is doing this lovely bit of bushwhackling both together. He laid aside the dream-catching net but hung on to the suitcase. He ran across to the other side of the cave and grabbed the long trumpet thing, the one he'd been carrying when Sophie had first seen him in the village. With the suitcase in one hand and the trumpet in the other, he dashed out of the cave. What is he up to now? Sophie wondered. Keep your head up good, the BFG said. Then you'll get a fine winkle of what is going on. When the BFG came near to the sleeping giants, he slowed his pace. He began moving softly. He crept on his toes towards the ugly brutes. They were still snoring loudly. They looked filthy, repulsive, diabolical. The BFG tiptoed around them. He went past the gizzard gulper, the blood bottler, the meat dripper, the child chewer. Then he stopped. He had reached the flesh lump eater. He pointed at him. Then he looked down at Sophie and gave her a big wink. He knelt on the ground and very quietly he opened the suitcase. He took out of it the glass jar containing the terrible nightmarish Trogglehumper. At that point, Sophie guessed what was going to happen next. Ouch, she thought. This could be rather dangerous. She crouched lower in the pocket so that only the top of her head and her eyes were showing. She wanted to be ready to duck out of sight very fast should anything go wrong. They were about 10 feet away from the flesh lump eater's face. The snoring, snorting noise he was making was disgusting. Every now and again, a big bubble of spit formed between his two open lips, and then it would burst with a splash and cover his face with saliva. Taking infinite care, the BFG unscrewed the top of the glass jar and tipped the squiggling, squirming, faintly scarlet Trogglehumper into the wide end of his long trumpet. He put the other end of the trumpet to his lips. He aimed the instrument directly at the flesh lump eater's face. He took a deep breath, puffed out his cheeks, and then he blew. Sophie saw a flash of pale red go darting towards the giant's face. For a split second it hovered above the face. Then it was gone. It seemed to have been sucked up the giant's nose, but it all happened so quickly, Sophie couldn't be sure. Feel it. We had better be skidding away quick to where it is safe, the BFG whispered. He trotted off for about 100 yards, then he stopped. He crouched low to the earth. Now, he said, we are waiting for the gun and flames to begin. They didn't have long to wait. The air was suddenly pierced by the most fearful roar Sophie had ever heard, and she saw the flesh lump eater's body, all 54 feet of it, rise up off the ground and fall back again with a thump. Then it began to wriggle and twist and bounce about in the most violent fashion. It was quite frightening to watch. Ew! Roared the flesh lump eater. Eee! Oh! He's still asleep, the BFG whispered. The terrible trog-humping nightmare is beginning to hit him. Serves him right, Sophie said. She could feel no sympathy for this great brute who ate children as though they were sugar lumps. Save us! Screamed the flesh lump eater, thrashing about madly. He is after me! He is getting me! The thrashing of limbs and the waving of arms became more violent by the second. It was an awesome thing to watch such a massive creature having such mighty convulsions. It's Jack! Bellowed the flesh lump eater. It's the grueful, gruntious Jack! Jack is after me! Jack is whack-cracking me! Jack is spike-sticking me! Jack is splash-plunking me. It's the terrible, fright-swiping Jack. The flesh lump eater was writhing about over the ground like some colossal tortured snake. Oh, spare me, Jack, he yelled. Don't hurt me, Jack. Who is this Jack he's on about? Sophie whispered. Jack is the only human being all giants is frightened of, the BFG told her. They is all absolutely terrified of Jack. They is all hearing that Jack is a famous giant killer. Save me, screamed the flesh lump eater. Have mercy on this poor little giant, the beanstalk. He's coming at me with his terrible spike-sticking beanstalk. Take it away. I is begging you, Jack. I is praying you not to touch me with your terrible spike-sticking beanstalk. Us giants, the BFG whispered, is not knowing very much about this dreaded human being called Jack. We is knowing only that he's a famous giant killer and that he is owning something called a beanstalk. We is knowing also that the beanstalk is a fearsome thing and Jack is using it to kill giants. Sophie couldn't stop smiling. What is you griggling at? The BFG asked her, slightly nettled. I'll tell you later, Sophie said. The awful nightmare had now gripped the great brute to such an extent that he was tying his whole body into knots. Do not do it, Jack, he screeched. I was not eating you, Jack. I is never eaten human beings. I swear I has never gobbled a single human being in my all wholesome life. Liar, said the BFG. Just then, one of the flesh lump eater's flailing fists caught the still fast asleep meat-dripping giant smack in the mouth. At the same time, one of his furiously thrashing legs kicked the snoring gizzard-gulping giant right in the guts. Both the injured giants woke up and leapt to their feet. He is swiping me right in the mouth, yelled the meat dripper. He is bung-swaggling me smack in the guts, shouted the gizzard-gulper. The two of them rushed at the flesh lump eater and began pounding him with their fists and feet. The wretched flesh lump eater woke up with a bang. He awoke straight from one nightmare into another. He roared into battle, and in the bellowing, thumping rough and tumble that followed, one sleeping giant after another either got stepped upon or kicked. Soon, all 9 of them were on their feet, having the most almighty free-for-all. They punched and kicked and scratched and bit and butted each other as hard as they could. Blood flowed, noses went crunch, teeth fell out like hailstones. The giants roared and screamed and cursed, and for many minutes the noise of battle rolled across the yellow plain. The BFG smiled a big wide smile of absolute pleasure. I is loving it when they is all having a good tough and rumble, he said. They'll kill each other, Sophie said. Never, the BFG answered. Those beasts is always bishing and walloping at each other. Soon it'll be getting dusky and they'll be galloping off to fill their tummies. They're coarse and foul and filthy, Sophie said. I hate them. As the BFG headed back to the cave, he said quietly, We certainly was putting that nightmare to good use though, wasn't we? Excellent use, Sophie said. Well done you. Okay, the next chapter is called Dreams. So I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.